Welcome back. I'm talking to Neil Sanders about scandals in the media pertaining to children. Now then, Neil, there are other similar scandals. Fred West, there's the Joseph Fritzl case, there's the Franklin cover-up, and the Gacy case.
Yeah.
You think that very similar things were going on in those cases?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
so let's just take Fred West then.
Well,
so you think there were other people involved going to his house, being filmed or what have you?
Yeah, I mean,
so it wasn't just him and his wife.
No. In fact,
did any of that come out at the trial? The other people that were involved?
Well, this is the interesting thing. The two people started talking about it, and both of them hung themselves in police custody.
Right.
That was Fred West and Fred West's brother John, who said that he wasn't involved in the murders, but he was involved in the orgies at the sex cult. What's interesting is that Fred West, some of the girls that basically sort of escaped their grasps or whatever, there's one particular one whose name I forget, she met them one night on the road. They pulled her over, and she'd previously known them but wasn't very keen on them. They tried to sort of lure her in the car by saying, we're going to one of our parties. We're going to one of our famous parties with, local celebrities and people, so why not come along? What's really strange is that basically the suggestion is that they were finding girls and stuff like that for these, again, elite sex parties. Right. What's strange is that there is a video that exists of Fred West and his daughter Heather, who he apparently later killed, having sex, that is available on certain paedophile websites and such, and that's never actually been denied. What's strange, as I say, is that with the Fred West case, there's a couple of things that are unusual. Rosemary West was known to be a prostitute, and they filmed all her encounters for whatever reason.
Right.
Okay. The other thing is that basically, as I say, him and his brother John both committed suicide. It's the second that Rosemary West said, I'm not having anything to do with this, it was all Fred. Fred basically went into a complete depression, so should have been on 24-hour suicide watch and was somehow able to hang himself in custody, because the last thing that he said before he did it was, there are other people involved, I'm going to start talking.
Really? Right. Yeah. So he's possibly been murdered in custody, right, to stop the extent of this ring being revealed.
The other thing that was very strange about the victims of Fred West is that every single body that was found in his back garden had fingers from the hands missing, usually the left hands. Now, left hand, this is speculative, but if you were to kill somebody in a black magic style ritual, you would remove something of their left hand to show that you're a member of the left hand path. In witchcraft, if you do something like that, you will remove fingers from the left hand.
Never heard of that before.
Well, this is it. I'm not suggesting that thing, but it's a very curious coincidence if that is true.
All right then. Do you want to touch on some of the others? We've got the Joseph Fritzl and I think this is pretty morbid stuff for people to listen to while they're eating their tea. But you go on then.
Well, I mean, the Joseph Fritzl thing, the thing that interested me about that was right at the beginning. For people that don't know who Joseph Fritzl was, he was I think he was Austrian. And basically he was imprisoning his daughter or daughters beneath the house in a secret lockup, exactly like Mark Dintro.
And West as well.
And West, and Charles Ing, and Leonard Lake, and Dean Corlin, and various other ones. Basically, at the beginning, it came out when his daughter escaped and she'd been pregnant and, incestuous, multi-generational children and such like that. When it initially came out, it was suggested that local policemen, local sort of celebrities, local members of parliament and stuff were also going to Fritzl's house. By the end of the investigation, even his wife didn't know that there was a secret. She just thought that the daughter ran away, which I don't believe for a second either. So, again, no proof, but it's certainly very, very strange. And was this an identical scenario where people are actually using children for this?
Okay, well, let's come back to Saville then. So why do you think they've brought out this revelations about Jimmy Saville now? To me, the reason why they would not do it while he was still alive is because if he's given evidence, he could just name everyone just to protect himself, right? So that's obviously one reason why it might only come out after he's dead. But why bring it out at all?
I'm not sure. To me, like again, my initial thought was it's to crack down on people who are making speculations on Twitter and stuff like that. It's to basically get rid of the sort of freedom of speech element of it.
Right.
undoubtedly, it is to hide a broader scandal, because essentially the people that have been definitely named, even by the mainstream, are Cyril Smith, the MP, Jimmy Saville, Freddie Starr, who's persona non grata, Gary Glitter, who's persona non grata, and Peter Morrison. Peter Morrison was the private press secretary to Margaret Thatcher.
Now, just repeat something that you said to me earlier, Neil. I don't know. I'm not quite sure if you actually want to state this, but it could be relevant now. Wrote a book where he talks about handling the media and putting out information. If you've got a particular dangerous scandal that you want to hide, you put out something else which is not quite true, or just tell me what he says in that book.
The book is called The New Machiavelli, and in it basically what he says is that if there's ever a scandal that's going to come out, you take an element of it that is not true and force that through the mainstream so that you are accused of something that is not true, so that basically then you can deny that, garner public sympathy. The other thing that he says is, if you're going to go on television, cultivate a speech impediment. Make yourself look dishevelled and silly, because then basically people will be sympathetic to you.
So how does that tie into the Saville thing? We don't want to, because I think he's threatened to sue people, hasn't he?
He has. Basically, well, the gentleman that you're referring to was named in an article by a magazine called Scallywag. Scallywag is kind of like a private eye type thing, and it did an investigation into this very care home about 15-20 years ago, and in that, basically, in the original Scallywag article, certain other people were named,
because apparently there were other.
There's not just the
other mainstream publications were going to cover this, and they were warned off by MI5. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even in the case of Cyril Smith basically was proven that. What's interesting about the Cyril Smith thing is, just like the Jimmy Saville thing, apparently mistakes were made. It was an open secret. Everybody knew it. But what happened with Cyril Smith is he went to Private Eye, the Ian Hislop thing, and said, if you reprint that, I'm going to sue you for libel.
Right.
Now, even though the story was true, he was basically tying them up and threatening them to not pursue this with libel. Thank God we don't live in an age where that could happen now.
Right.
This is exactly what's happened. But again, to my mind, why is this? What it looks like, because we're mentioning names, we're mentioning Cyril Smith, Saville, Starr, Peter Morrison. Peter Morrison, what's interesting about Peter Morrison was he was so well known as a pederast that in her memoirs, Edwina Currie wrote, it's a bit unfortunate getting Peter Morrison in to be the private press secretary of Margaret Thatcher, because he's known to be a paedophile. But it's all right, because he's assured Margaret Thatcher, myself, and whoever else has bothered to ask him that he's very discreet.
Right.
So
a pederast?
Pederast, somebody that aggressively attacks boys.
All right.
Pedophile, but aggressive with it.
Right. Now, all right, and so you think that there's just a tiny piece of this whole thing being put out with Saville and all the other people who've been named. You think it goes much further and deeper?
Well, I think the fact that we're naming individual names, it puts, because most people don't know and don't frankly want to know that this is a tactic of the intelligence agencies to use these children for sex in whatever purpose, either for fun or for blackmail. And so it sounds like it's dirty old man going around. It's an individual case, and unfortunately these safeguards should have been in place, but they weren't. And that's what's happened. I don't buy that for a second. I think, as I say, because of the connection to Franklin, the similarities to Franklin, the Martin preschool trial, and all these other things, it looks very much like it's institutionalised.
Right. Okay. I'll stop you there, Neil. So it's institutionalised.
Yeah.
So who's orchestrating it?
Probably the intelligence agencies, for whatever reason, either for blackmail, like in the case of Franklin, like in the case of Jeffrey Epstein, or just for pure pleasure for the people. The thing that I'm reminded of is, again...
Is there any trail to the intelligence agencies? Can you actually...
There is rumours of basically, essentially, when they were investigating certain people, Scallywag seemed to imply that when they were investigating it, MI5 came down on them like a ton of bricks and basically said, don't investigate this anymore. It is a fact that a lot of the evidence that has been collected by the police connected to this case has been lost. The Gillings report, which was the report that was done 15 years ago, was sealed by the police. Now that's only just coming out. And the BBC have decided that any investigation into Jimmy Saville will be done in private.
Right, so control of the media, as we know, which we were going to discuss actually, is largely by intelligence agencies. They have a huge influence over them, and they work in people who are intelligence agencies work in the media. We know this.
Yeah.
So, okay. Now there's the Haute de la Grande.
That was the one in Jersey, where essentially, again, a very similar scenario, a care home where the story was that these children were being pimped out to very rich clients, including stories of them being taken on yacht rides around the island and such like.
Do you think it's the same thing there?
I think it's exactly the same thing. Essentially, the police went in and investigated. They got very top level forensic scientists in and such, and found bones and blood. They found children's skulls. They'd been doing this investigation for 6 months until a higher echelon of the police came in and went, whoa, hang on, let's have a look at this. And the higher echelon of the police turned out that these skulls that they'd found were actually bits of coconut. Are we really supposed to believe that the police for 6 months couldn't tell the difference between bone and coconut?
Yeah. Well, we know that case was covered up, I think. So, okay, so back to the original question, which is, why would they even put out any of these people? Why would they expose any of it?
Well, essentially what they're doing is they're throwing corpses to the floor, to the masses. Like, okay, they're saying, okay,
because a lot of these people have passed away. They're naming.
Absolutely. I mean, it's very strange, right? There is still a very big question mark about why it has come out.
Right.
And the question is whether some of the original sort of witnesses, or the people who have now come out purporting to be the witnesses, are basically going to turn around and change their story, and then the whole incident might be used as a way to chastise the press for going off half-cocked. In a similar way to the way that people were naming people on Twitter, and they can say, hang on, you look, back up, because you're naming innocent people.
So they'll throw out a few red herrings for people to report on, and then they get chastised because they've got it wrong.
Yeah, like Max Clifford. It might come out that Max Clifford was accused by somebody completely out of the blue or something like that.
Right,
and then when it transpires, when he comes out and says, well, we can't have this, we can't have innocent people being vilified in the press.
Let's come on to him then. Now today I actually ran out of toilet paper, so I thought I'd kill two birds with one stone and buy a copy of The Sun. And we'll talk about this front page story in a moment, but the Max Clifford thing's in here. So see, this is a guy who's a linchpin in the mainstream media.
Yeah, Max Clifford does not get caught.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about something else about Max Clifford in a second.
Yeah.
I'm truly innocent. Kiss and tell. Max fights back after 12 hours in cell. Now, do you think this could be one of these red herrings? That he's agreed to be thrown out. I'm not saying this is true, folks. I'm speculating as to what might be going on. That Clifford, with his media chums, has agreed. He said, "Yeah, arrest me. We'll prove it all wrong." And then that's the way of slapping the wrist.
Yeah, I think that's certainly a possibility. I think that's very possible. And what was interesting about when I was watching it basically on Thursday night, when he came out of the police station, most people won't see this as significant, but his car wasn't there. His car wasn't there. That never happens. You know, if you come out and do a press conference, you immediately get into your car. Strangely, his car was down the road. So poor, sad Max Clifford had to shuffle down the street, being papped all along the way, looking pathetic and walking down to his car.
So you think that is a bit of a psyop then?
I think that's a bit of media manipulation to frame him as, hang on, that's a bit off, isn't it?
So Saville is perhaps a genuine case, and you think that they may be putting out ones that aren't now,
possibly,
to sort of stop the net widening, if you like.
Yeah, absolutely. Because basically, what they're going to do is they're going to come in with a prefect and go, whoa, we're all angry, we're all cross, but we're getting carried away with this now, and innocent people are getting hurt. Which is exactly what's been happening at the care homes.
Yeah, nothing would surprise me. Anyway, we're going to take another break and join us shortly.